Welcome back, everybody. Again, look at our poll question. Got a ton of votes on this for Bison football fans. What destination are you looking forward to the most in the Mountain West? Between Vegas, Honolulu, Colorado Springs, Albuquerque. We had a bunch of write-in votes as well. We'll give the results on that before we say goodbye. Yesterday, as part of the hullabaloo, hubbub, whatever you want to phrase it, we had a chance to visit with the commissioner of the Mountain West Conference, and Gloria Nevarez, who's been in this position for the last 3 years, oversaw basically her league blowing up with Boise State, Colorado State, San Diego State, Utah State, Fresno State leaving and going to the Pac-12. There were talks, we had it on this program, that the league may dissolve. It is not, and now yesterday they added North Dakota State as the 10th football member. First question I had right off the hop, and you'll enjoy, I think, this conversation. She's pretty forthright with as much as she can be, is frankly why NDSU was appealing to them.
I took the job in 2023. Expansion was already the hot topic. It had been out in the ether, in the news. And so ever since 2023, we have been actively thinking about looking at membership. Of course, when 5 of the schools left for the Pac-12, we went into kind of extra mode, and then we've settled back down. And, North Dakota State has always been on our radar. I've always appreciated and had a high level of respect for what they've done. I think they fit with us both geographically and mission value culturally. They look a lot like the schools in the Mountain West, and they make our football better.
The biggest thing, I think, is the immediacy. Why so soon? Was that driven by North Dakota State? Was that your end? Because typically with this, it's normally a year plus run up. Why this fall?
It's interesting. It doesn't feel soon to us because we've been, like I said, looking at expansion since 23. And then, of course, the next year we had the departure. There were some political headwinds against elevating FCS schools to FBS, both at the CFP level and NCAA policy. The NCAA dictates the transition policy. So when we were looking to replace the 5 schools, we weren't sure if those transition policies were going to change, or, if you commit to elevating a school and then 2 years later the goalposts move, that wouldn't have been good for either. So at that time, we put a pause on looking at FCS schools. Recently, we have, solidified our membership. We have a grant of rights in place, at least through 32. We just announced our media rights deal. So we have a lot of solid footing and are now, looking strategically long-term. How do we continue an upward trajectory?
Is that more the moratorium was done on FCS schools moving up that basically opened the door here?
It was less about, and I can't speak to a moratorium specifically, but it was more about the threat that they might close the loop, not the loophole, close the process or make it more difficult. But certainly you saw they raised the entrance fee, and that was step one. We weren't sure if there were more requirements or maybe a longer wait period, whatever, you don't know. We passed the point in which we thought that those rules might be changing. We felt better about looking at elevating FCS.
Were there some presidents that you had to do some arm twisting with to say this is the right fit for us?
I wouldn't say there was any arm twisting. It was previously, like I said, more about political headwinds and policy. This time around, it was, we had some ADs kind of joke off the cuff, like, I wouldn't play them unless they were in our league because they're that good.
Yeah. What was the reaction, I guess, from the other presidents? I guess this is going to be a done deal. Can you describe that?
Honestly, excitement. They have a lot of respect for the university academically. Presidents have that filter as well. The impact on football, the data shows itself. So it really was excitement and a lot of goodwill.
The entry fee, Commissioner, is that something that the league established, or how much negotiation is there between the conference and the school on the entry fee?
I don't want to comment on the particulars of the agreement or the negotiation, but I will say it was collaborative, and definitely I think we both feel really good about it.
The big question I think everyone out here is schedule, and I know you haven't put one out yet. Was this in anticipation of adding a 10th member?
Yes, and our Associate Commissioner for Football, John Sullivan, is in charge of the schedule, and he said, we got this. As long as we can close a deal by late January, early February, we're still on track.
When do you anticipate releasing a schedule? Do you know yet?
I got to ask John, but I don't think it'll be later than February.
Okay. With the new media rights deal done as well, what does that do exposure-wise for your league? I know you put out in a statement that the legacy schools are still getting as much as they were in the previous deal. How much does North Dakota State have access to that initially, or is that something they have to wait to get to that pool of money?
Again, I don't want to comment too much on the details of the membership agreement, but I will say, as a football-only full participant, they will be eligible for selection, and we're really excited in the media rights package. We have continued our relationships with CBS and Fox, and that's really big for us. Two major partners in the sports space that have been with us for some time, that know us well, really good about promoting us. Adding the CW, also getting serious about being in the sports space. But the fourth partner, Kiswe, and putting a paywall around our Mountain West network is also really exciting in the upward potential. It was modeled based on conservative estimates regarding viewership, subscriptions, but there's also an upside there to sell sponsorship. Each school will have its own portal to the greater channel, but skinned in their colors and logos. And so any subscriptions you bring in through the pull down menu, who are you following? Bison, then that money or a lion's share of it will go back to that institution.
Travel wise, I know is always a thing. Granted, it's football, so you're flying anyway, but you describe a concern, maybe it's too strong a word. You're going from Hawaii to Illinois now with North Dakota thrown in there. Can you describe how far flung the league is now?
We've always been an airplane league. That is the nature of being FBS in the West. We just don't have the population of schools that you do in the Eastern Seaboard. And so we've gotten pretty adept at trying to the best that we can balance schedules, start times, and long travels, and rest between your long travels against opponents. So while we very much understand it's taxing, in the sport of football, it's a little bit easier to manage in that you're only traveling once a week and typically by charter. So that's where we felt comfortable stretching our boundary a little bit, but in the entirety of our expansion efforts, regionality was important to us.
Everyone has asked me, Commissioner, to explain the Hawaii schedule. Can you do that? Because I think North Dakota State fans are how it's worked in the past and potentially how it could work now with a 10-team league.
I'm going to have to punt that question because I got to wait to see what our football guy comes up with as far as schedule. But there will be some triangulation with the long travels, Northern Illinois, Fargo, Honolulu.
How has it worked in the past? Can you describe that, at least for your team's travel into Honolulu? How does that work for football? Is it like every 4 years? What's the rotation like, I guess?
I believe it's every other, but
okay,
don't quote me on that.
Okay. Did your president's athletic directors?
Sorry, an interesting note that this rule might go away, but for right now, recall if you play a game against Hawaii at Hawaii, you now get to schedule a game in week 0. So that's always been something that's very attractive to the Mountain West.
Yep. For your athletic directors, presidents, was there any information needed? Does North Dakota State, I know it's well known, but I think for fans here, they don't know your schools as well. Was it flipped like that? Did they know much about North Dakota State, or did you have to inform them throughout this whole process?
I would say it's a combo. There was a high level awareness of what North Dakota State had achieved in football at the FCS level. But, when you consider membership, you go a lot deeper. Yeah. You go into an academic profile, you go into budgets and facilities and historic trending, scrubbing any kind of, are there any warts on the resume? So it was just a much deeper dive for everyone. But I think everyone in both the AD and president room had a high level familiarity of the athletic success.
Stadium size gets brought up a lot here as well. Do you describe how the Fargodome sits with the rest of your stadiums in the league?
I do think it's comparable to bottom third, but percentage filled to capacity and ticket sale is definitely middle, if not high end of the conference.
How was that? How appealing was that in adding them?
Again, part of that deeper dive, really looking at the demographics, how tickets sell both at home and on the road. You know, it was evident that your fans do like to travel, as you already asked about the Hawaii trip. But also how that might translate to tune-ins and viewership and subscriber, and just you can feel as the news came out the volume of interested fan base just on the microcosm that is social following and interaction.
Looking ahead for the college football playoff, and that's another whole bite at the apple that we're getting used to now. Looking forward now for how that looks and the Mountain West position at that. Can you give me your, I guess, overview on where things are going, knowing expansion is likely coming in 27 or 28, and how the group of 6 schools have positioned themselves there?
Yeah, and as the entirety of expansion unfolded, access for the group of 6 was always a very important thing, because you'll see in the last 2 years alone the relevancy and attention that it has brought to our conference races and conference championship is something you can't replicate on your own. And if you're not playing for something, you're not playing for anything. So it has been absolutely an amazingly successable property in its own right, but really pumped up that conference race. And so that's what we aim to be. We know we're not going to be a Power 4 level spending NIL, but we compete. And if we are always in the running for that spot and getting that spot on a regular basis, that is our goal.
Bowl tie-ins, where are you at with that right now, Commissioner? I know the LA Bowl, I think they announced they ceased operations. I know you had a tie-in with that. Where are things at, or how, I guess, in flux are things right now with the bowl tie-ins?
You know, we describe the bowl situation as almost musical chairs, but the music keeps going, because the first domino that has to fall is a determination of what the CFP field size is going to be, and the weeks, and how many teams will be in that versus in the bowl ecosystem. And so that didn't happen until January 23rd. Did we get finality, at least for next year? And again, as you mentioned, many folks think this conversation is going to flow into 27. So the big question is, do we re-up bowl agreements for 1 year or the next 4 to 5? So we're constantly in that world, talking to our partners and lining up our bowl agreements for definitely for next year for 26, but also still kind of waiting for the music on 27 and beyond.
For NDSU's purposes, Commissioner, they would be bowl eligible this year if there aren't enough bowl teams to qualify. Do I understand that correctly?
Correct.
And the Mountain West Championship game, would they be eligible to participate in that this fall if they were to make it?
No, we have a bylaw that if you're not eligible in any sport,
Okay,
then you're not eligible for the Mountain West Championship. So if you're not eligible for NCAA postseason, or in this case, CFP postseason, you wouldn't be eligible for our championship for obvious reasons.
I was in Las Vegas 2 summers ago when the Big 12 had its media day, and I know you guys were out there as well, and I believe now the league offices have relocated there. Describe that, of the importance of being there. You have a team obviously there, and what that strategy was of moving the league offices to Las Vegas.
Our lease was coming due in Colorado Springs, and back in the day, we had incentives to locate the office. It's been a wonderful home, and it was definitely center of the footprint back in the day when we were stretched a little bit more east. And so when we had an opportunity to look around, Las Vegas seemed to be really made sense as a geographic center, what Las Vegas has become to sports, national conferences, and our own championships. The ability to get quick flights and hotels to host coaches meetings, board meetings, and things like that really just made a lot of sense for us.
I would say for my show, can you give us your best pitch for the Mountain West for NDSU fans that are maybe hung up on FCS and they're going to miss the playoffs? I would say give your best commissioner pitch on why FBS in the Mountain West is the best home for North Dakota State.
Well, you know, we find talent and we elevate it. Even before transfer portal and NIL, this league was scrapping and constantly battling, but always competitive. And in the bowl space, BCS, now the expanded CFP, we have national television partners that are so excited to broadcast our games in CBS, Fox, CW, and opening up this new platform on Kiswe. And I think fans will really enjoy the destinations that you get to travel to in the Mountain West. You mentioned Hawaii, the Bay Area, you've got Albuquerque, all like wonderful vacation destinations, Colorado Springs and Air Force. And it's just, it's an amazing travel footprint.
Last thing, I really appreciate you doing this on a busy day. Is there anything surprised you, the reaction you've over the last, 36 hours, once it's become official, out of your office or your schools about this edition? What have you, it's gotten a ton of attention nationally, it appears as well, which I don't think necessarily happen a lot for editions in realignment.
I would say I felt strongly. I knew it would be positive. I was pleasantly surprised at, to your point, how the national media has picked it up and how positive it's been, not only internally from colleagues and our own constituents, but externally as well.
When you have an update to Fargo, you have that mapped out yet or not yet?
Not yet, but it will be soon. It'll be my first time. I'm excited.
Have you had a chance to, have you seen adjacently North Dakota State football in your travels, or what have you heard about the Bison and their fans?
Yeah, like I said, I had a high level of awareness, how they were doing, following the championship runs, that type of thing. But the deep dive and seeing what you've done in facilities and the Fargodome, it's an amazing. I look forward to seeing it in person.
Conversation with the Commissioner of the Mountain West. Good stuff there. We'll take our last break. We come back. We'll wrap it up. Get you ready for a busy Tuesday. Hot Mike wraps after this.